Hello and welcome to Standard 10 of the Oklahoma Personal Financial Literacy Standards. We get to visit with Carrie Hickson again today. She is a personal finance teacher at Mustang High School, and she is going to walk us through the materials that are provided by the State Department of Education and show us what is entailed in those materials. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to you, Carrie.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so Standard 10 is about housing and it has three separate modules: the cost and benefits of renting versus owning, renting and leases, and then buying a house and dealing with mortgages. You could probably cover it quickly in 3 days, but more than likely it's going to take you at least a week to complete. It typically takes me about 6 to 7 days to get through this, maybe longer, depending on how much time I have and want to take. So Module 10.1 discusses the costs and benefits of renting versus owning. It has students consider their needs versus their wants as it relates to housing. And as my students and I all agree that our wants can really add up when we start talking about housing and really increase the costs. The teacher guide has enrichment activities toward the end, and one of these would make a really great introduction to this standard. It uses the children's book, Make Way for Ducklings by Robert McCloskey, which is a classic and one of my favorites. As you read the book to students, have them create a list of the things that Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were considering when they were trying to find a place to live. And so one of the things that it does, it takes you through the story, and they're searching for a place to raise their babies, and they think they find the perfect place to finally raise their children. And it just works you through it, and it's a really precious story. Then you can have the students, once they've done that, translate that to themselves or their family and what they might need in regards to location, safety, talks about maybe how it might be wise to visit the property at different times during the day. So that's just one option for introducing this. The student lesson has a housing choices activity also, which allows students to think through the different options of housing based on different scenarios that are set forth. You could do this as a classroom activity, group activity, or even have them do it individually. The Better Money Habits has a short video about renting versus owning that students enjoy, and it has a lot of information packed into it to reinforce what is being taught. And I'm going to try to get in here now and share my screen. This is what Better Money Habits looks like. If you go in, it is free online curriculum or information put out by Bank of America. And in this one, we're on the housing. And so if we come down here and look at the housing, we can see that they have videos. And the one that I'm talking about is this one, the pros and cons of renting versus buying a home. They also have several other videos, which would be awesome to use during this. How much home can you afford? And then we'll go over the true cost of renting a place here in just a minute. You can see that they also have infographics, and they have things where you can do just some more reading to find out. So that would be something that could be available for you if you wanted to use that. So that's the 10.1. Module 10.2 goes into more detail about renting and leases. And I think it's really important that students understand that a lease is a legal and binding contract, and you can be taken to court if you don't follow through with the terms and conditions. The module does go into some of these terms and conditions that a lease should cover. Next Gen Personal Finance, which is another online free curriculum, has an activity in their budgeting unit about renting an apartment. And it has students look at a sample lease and then answer questions over that lease agreement. So if you have the time, you might do that for the students so that they can see what an actual example of a lease would look like. Module 10.2 also goes into further detail on the advantages and disadvantages of renting. And Better Money Habits, again, has that other video, the true cost of renting a place. And I usually show this to my students. A lesson on this video has also been created by the Council of Economic Education, and you can get to it on their webpage, which is econedlink.org. And I'll kind of briefly explain how I go about using this. So you should be able to see the lesson here, the renting a place to live. And this is on the, again, the Econ Ed link. And so the lesson tells you a warm-up procedure, and then it gives you modeling, and then a group activity, and then the individual activity. So on this would be the video that they would be watching. There is a worksheet that can kind of go along with that video that they can fill out as they are watching the video, asking them questions about what they are seeing on the video. I typically go over this with them after the video is over because sometimes it goes a little fast and they may not catch it all. So that would be the first thing that you could have them do in watching that video. Then based on that, I'm going to have them do this individual activity. And you would distribute a copy of the comparing rental options. Now, what I do before they even get this is I have them choose a number between 1 and 4. And that number is going to correspond to their income, their yearly income. And typically number 1 is going to be the highest income. So that might be the average cost, or not the average cost, the average income in Oklahoma City. Number 2 might be the average income in Oklahoma, which is typically a little bit lower. Number 3 would be, I usually make that be a first-year teacher salary. And so that's a little eye-opening for students. And number 4 is a wage. And I usually make it between $10.50 or $12.50 an hour. The reason I do this is because I typically have at least one student every semester or every year that's like, I'm moving out. I'm getting out of my parents' house. You know, they're tired of living with mom and dad. They don't like the rules. And so they think that they can get off on their own. And I ask them, do you have a job? Yeah. Do you make good money? Yeah. And they think it's good if it's over minimum wage. And so I usually put that in here also because it's pretty eye-opening to students that actually get that one. Then once they've got their income, they're going to figure out what their monthly income is and then how much is available for housing. And the video has talked about the 30% rule, and 30% of your gross income should go to all of your housing. Then they can pick 2 locations. Now you can have them go out and do this on their own and do the research on their own if you have the time. I personally usually have some already picked out for them to reduce the amount of time it takes in class. I usually have 2 apartment complexes that are local. Then I'll pick one that's like in Bricktown, so a little more expensive, a little bit different area. And then typically a smaller rent house. This last time I did one that's by the UCO campus because a lot of people, my students are going to go off to college and think about renting a house also. Then you can do the utilities, the renter's insurance, other costs, which could be parking, it could be internet, anything like that. And again, you can have them go out and find these on their own, or you can kind of guesstimate what they would be for them. And then they're going to decide whether that location fits that 30% rule. And then they'll do a second one and giving a brief description of both properties. Then they have to decide which of those options would be best for them and then explain why. I also usually have them tell me the 3 things that they have learned from this. So this is a really eye-opening activity for students. And every time I do it, students are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea it cost so much. Oh my gosh, there's no way you can make it as a low income wage earner. And it would be even really hard to make it as a first-year teacher. And so then we start talking about roommates and how roommates can help reduce, or share some of those costs. So that is an activity that you could use for the 10.2. The last module in Standard 10 is over homeownership and mortgages. This topic could be introduced again by another video that we saw from the Better Money Habits on how much home can you afford. The lesson goes into further detail about the advantages and disadvantages of home ownership. It also discusses how to finance a home. And for my students, this can be a bit more difficult because for a lot of them, it's the first time they've been introduced to this topic and all the vocabulary that goes along with it. You might choose to do the mortgage calculation activity, the activity 10.3 that's in the student lesson together, and then maybe create your own with different numbers for them to work on. So that's just a thought. There's also two additional enrichment activities. They're at the end of the teacher's guide, and these would be a great way to have students apply what they have learned. The housing wheel activity can help them make informed decisions about where they want to live. So that's one of them. Or you could use the decisions activity to have them use the paced decision-making model that you probably taught them in the economic reasoning lesson at the very beginning of the semester. And that means that they can now use it once again, practicing how and why we've taught them this, to make a decision that's really important and really expensive and is going to have a long-term impact. And so that would be another option. Most of my students really appreciate this lesson, especially my seniors, since most of them see themselves moving out of their parents' home pretty soon. And this gives them real life knowledge about something that they will quickly be putting into practice. So I hope this kind of helps you know what's going on with Standard 10 and maybe ways that you can teach it. Back to you, Amy.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Carrie. Carrie, you mentioned three resources that I think are like some the top three. There's so many things out there, and that can be overwhelming to personal finance teachers. But I think those are the top three, and that should be in a teacher's tool bag. As you mentioned, Next Gen, Econ EdLink, and then those Better Money Habits videos. Those are, if you have those three in your back pocket, you're set to go. And I think that's one of the big parts about using the State Department curriculum is that's the best base to get started and make sure that everything that needs to be taught is there, and then use those other resources and activities to really make learning happen and memorable. That's adding that the spices on top to enhance. So wonderful. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing with us how it looks in your classroom and the resources that you use. And I think this will be very helpful to our teachers teaching Standard 10.